What if I told you that you could get your S95B to act just like a Samsung S90C and S95C? Would you believe me? And would you believe me if I told you I can get your S95B to look very close to how it looked before the 12.11 firmware update that changed everything? Now, that last one I said is kind of going to be up to you to decide if I actually achieved that or not. I think I got pretty close. Tell me what you think in the comments after the video. Now on the screen, what you see is the S95B is in a mystery mode and the S90C is going to be in a movie mode with the active tone mapping on, of course, which is what is default for movie mode on the S90C. So one of the biggest draws to the S90C and S95C is that active tone mapping option instead of the static tone mapping in your filmmaker and movie mode for the S95B. So there's like no way to do that in filmmaker and movie mode, and there still currently isn't a way to do that. But I can get you really, really close, and honestly, it might actually be the same exact behavior as what is going on with the active tone mapping. Imagine you had an S95B before all of the nerfs in the picture modes. Well, that's kind of what you're going to get after watching this video, and I think you're going to like it a lot. Now, when talking about the S95B and the S90C next to each other, they are so similar, and the biggest difference is going to be those active and static tone mapping, and also the skin tones are going to be a little bit different as well. So on the S95B, you'll see that the skin tones do favor to push a little bit more red in the skin tones, as the S90C actually doesn't do this as much and sometimes pushes a little bit more yellow in the skin tones. And some people actually don't like this yellow push in the skin tones for the S90C and they prefer the S95B. I think that they both have their pros and their cons, but I do think that the S90C and the S95C, for example, look more natural. I thought that the S95C did a better job with skin tones than the S90C, but they both were way different than the S95B. Most of the other things with this TV are very similar. Like, I can't really tell them apart at times, and I think that those of you that own an S95B would be silly to upgrade it to an S90C, especially with these workarounds that we have here. Unless, of course, you want that 77-inch size, then I completely understand. But I also want you to remember this is not going to be the official side-by-side comparison for these TVs. This is just going to show you that we can match the S90C as close as possible. So one of the reasons why they're so close is going to be that they are both sporting that Generation 1 QD-OLED panel. That's right, there is a panel lottery for the S90C, and those of you that are buying right now are likely going to get a Generation 1 panel until they run out. They have stopped making Generation 1 panels, but they're still using Generation 1 panels as long as they have them in the S90C. In fact, most of the people I've talked to have a Generation 1 panel in their S90C, and I haven't heard about anybody getting a Generation 2 panel, except for in the 77-inch size, which is exclusively in the Generation 2 panel because there was no Generation 1 77-inch size. Now, those of you that are watching this video and asking yourself, should I be getting an S95B or an S90C? The prices right now, I think, are favoring the S95B, and I think when you're looking at these TVs next to each other, they are so similar that I just get the cheapest one that I could get because they are using the same type of panel, unless you want to use the active tone mapping without this little tweak that I showed you here. And those of you that are thinking about buying one of these TVs, if you could do so on my affiliate links in the description below, that helps out the channel a lot, and I can't thank you guys enough for doing that. Alright, so now let's go through the modes. We're going to show you that the movie mode and the filmmaker mode on the S90C are different. One is using the active tone mapping in the movie mode, and then the static mode is going to be the filmmaker mode. This is going to be very similar to the S95B. In fact, the behavior is almost one for one. I think it is the same. So the S95B's movie and filmmaker mode look to be using this static HDR tone mapping algorithm, and that is something that I can definitely see with my eyes. Remember, one of the reasons for this was that the S95B got changed with a firmware update after Vincent from HD TV Test made a video ranting about the filmmaker mode being very inaccurate. And Samsung quickly addressed that and changed the filmmaker mode to be more accurate. Unfortunately, in a later update, they changed the movie mode to also be just like the filmmaker mode, and you lost your pretty much what is active tone mapping now in movie mode. After that update, you didn't really have a way to have that type of tone mapping back in your movie mode. It was gone completely because it behaved just like the filmmaker mode. I am on the latest firmware for the S95B right now, and I'm showing you that filmmaker mode and movie mode is the same exact behavior as filmmaker mode on the S90C, which is in the static tone mapping option. All right, now let's switch the S90C to movie mode, and then now you see there is a difference in the picture quality. The HDR tone mapping behavior has now changed. This is now in active mode by default. So pretty much the difference between the movie mode and filmmaker mode on the S90C is the movie mode is in active, filmmaker mode is in static. They're pretty much the same thing, just one is using active and one is using static. One of the things I thought about was changing standard to a warmer color temperature because it had a different tone mapping algorithm on the S95B. Unfortunately, it's not that same active tone mapping algorithm. It just doesn't look the same. The picture pop is not nearly the same as the active tone mapping. So this isn't going to be an option. Really quickly, before we continue, if you guys are enjoying this content so far, I just ask you if you could please hit the like button or even consider subscribing. This goes a long way in helping the channel grow so that we can pump out more videos that will help out more users. Thank you guys so much for your support. Alright, so now let's reveal this mystery mode and show exactly how to achieve it. So remember how I was talking about the S95B getting a lot of changes? People looked at a lot of this as being nerfs. And rightfully so, because a mode that they had and liked got changed, and in their mind, the TV got nerfed. In fact, some of the peak brightness did get changed a little bit with these modes in mind. One mode that didn't get changed was the dynamic mode, and this is the mode that we are going to tweak. Now, this is something that is going to be a little bit of a tougher task because there is no warm color temperature. We can't just change color tone to warm. There's only standard and cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the standard color tone. Then we're going to make sure that our color space is switched to auto DCI-P3. Change everything else the way that you wanted to change it. I had to take out the color and change that to 16, otherwise it did seem to have a little bit too much color. And then I also would drop the sharpness to 0, even though it might say 10 on the video. I did drop it later to 0 because I noticed that it was a little bit too sharp compared to the movie mode, which was at 0 sharpness. The key thing that you have to do here, since there is no warm color tone, then you have to go ahead and go to the white balance setting and pull out 40 of the blue, and you're going to make sure this is at -40, and then I put the red and the green at 4. This is something that you can tweak to your liking. I tried to match the S95B to the S90C as close as possible by using my eyes. I definitely wouldn't have been able to do this if it wasn't side by side, so having these TVs next to each other was such a big benefit in this comparison and trying to get the active tone mapping look for you guys in a warmer color temperature that would kind of look like a movie mode. So hopefully I achieved that. I think I got pretty close, but I don't think I got it 1 for 1. But not having a warm color tone was definitely an obstacle here. So again, you can change this to your liking. I was actually pretty surprised with some of the results. At times it looked very close. And yes, to me, it does look very similar to that movie mode. The only big difference is going to be the skin tones, but that has nothing to do with it being in dynamic mode. You can see that the skin tones are going to be different in any mode that you use. I'll show you that when I'm in filmmaker mode. You are still getting that difference in skin tone. What about game mode? Well, game mode by default is going to be in an active tone mapping option. As long as you don't have the game HDR toggled on, then your game mode is going to pretty much perform like it has the active tone mapping on it. Now, if you want to have that turned off, then you're going to turn your game HDR on. Pretty much when I compare these two in game mode, we got a very similar look across the board, and I'll share that with you guys in the official side-by-side when I do that later on. But I definitely wanted to just help all you S95B owners out because I don't think you need to upgrade this TV at all. I'm not upgrading it. In fact, I got some pretty good plans for the S95B coming up that I'll be sharing with you very soon. All right, what do you think of these settings? Tell me in the comments below. Hopefully they do help you out. And if you guys want to keep watching videos, check out one of these comparisons right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.